This is Andy Sneap here at Backstage Studios in England. We're talking about the Kemper Profiling Amp today, which we've used actually a little bit on the Accept album recently, and also on the Testament record we did some reamping with it, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm a producer. I've been for, it's going to be nearly 20 years now. I started off as a guitar player in my teens, like a lot of people do that get into this business. And I did 3 albums for a band called Sabbath in the late 80s. When the music industry within metal changed in the 90s, I kind of got more into the production side of things, because that's, I don't know, it kind of just seemed a natural progression for me. And I ended up working out in America sort of mid-90s out in LA with some of the sort of the heavier bands such as Machine Head, Testament, Exodus, a lot of the old school thrash bands from the Bay Area that I'd grown up listening to. There's always been this quest for tone, this quest for guitar tone, and production's come on leaps and bounds in the last 20 years when you listen to it. With the heavier stuff, it's obviously quite a saturated tone, but you also have the clarity in there as well. You want the note to come out a little bit more edgy than the classic rock type of tone. You know, the Les Paul into a Marshall doesn't quite cut it with the stuff I'm dealing with. You're after something that's got a bit more attack and a bit more vicious. So everyone that in the late 80s, when we were after guitar tone, we were always sort of souping the tone up by, you know, either a tube screamer in front of the amp or a graphic pedal of some sort, or an extra gain stage in the Marshall. Favourite amps, I'd say, well, the PV5150, which is now the 6505, has got to be in there. That really sort of was a good, like I say, a good step forward in guitar amps for me. The Boogie dual rectifier as well, I've used on a lot of stuff. The new Fender, actually, the EVH Fender, the sort of Mark III 5150 has been quite popular in the last year. And JCM 800s as well, the Marshall JCM 800s, if they were modded or with a certain pedal in front, always seemed to work. That, to me, the JCM 800 was the best thing that Marshall did. The Kemper Profiling Amp came about, I was out in Nashville working with Accept, and Wolf said to me, have you heard about this? And I'd always been a little bit dubious about things like that, you know, these profiling amps, because you don't want it to be true, you don't want it to work, you don't want to be able to put, you know, your sound into a box. You don't want to, it's like, you know, if you can bottle it and sell it, you know, well, they've done it, haven't they? So, yeah, I mean, Wolf turned around to me and said, you know, we've got a chance of trying this out. You know, let's get it in and have a bit of fun. You know, we're not on a time frame with the guitar tracking. So we got one sent over, and we actually could not believe what this thing did, how accurate it was. You know, when we were profiling amps and flicking between the profile and the actual amp, there'd be times, most of the time, we couldn't tell which one we were listening to. I mean, me and Wolf, I'd say, are two of the most critical people you'll find. You know, we've both got masses and masses of amps. You know, we've spent thousands and thousands of pounds on equipment, and we'd be the last people to want to believe this. But to say within 2-3 hours of trying the Kemper, we were convinced about it. It's, you know, I don't want it to work, but it does work. The profiling process on this, it's quite bizarre. You literally set it up how you would normally in the studio. So say I'm here, I've got a guitar, I've got my rig over there, I've got the speaker in the other room and mic'd up, and it's coming back through the desk. And then all you do basically is put the Kemper between you and the guitar and the amp, and then feed the signal that you're hearing back into the input in the back of the Kemper. It then runs the profiling setup that it's got, which is, it sounds like you've got a UFO landing in your other room. It's quite bizarre. And that it's captured it. Within 5 minutes of doing this, you've got that sound profiled, and you can literally, like I say, flick between the two. And if you've done the profile properly, you will be hard pushed to hear the difference. The amount of times I've been in the studio where, you've got your guitar rig carefully set up, you've got everything taped off, and then, midnight, the drummer snuck in to play his mates one of the tracks, trips over half the mics, and mysteriously the mics moved. I don't know how that happened. No one's been in here. That scenario, that happens so many times. Or an amp dies halfway through the recording where the tubes go down. You replace the tubes, it doesn't sound the same. A mic pre goes wrong, and you've been relying on that pre for the sound. All these little variables that you'll get within a session, you've just written out because you've managed to sample the amp at its prime. So you're not getting things drifting, you're not getting things changing, and it does happen all the time in the studio. So it's a real, foolproof way of capturing the sound how you want it, and it's not going to change. I mean, it just works for me because it makes studio time so flexible. You can have, you can spend a day going through, your clean settings, your semi-distorted settings, your lead tones, your main rhythm tones. Get them all profiled in there, so a flick of a switch, you can go between the two rather than having to change to another setting, which makes it more creative in the studio. If you want to try a different layer, like a cleaner tone within the chorus, you can literally click straight to it and go, to see if it's going to work. So you're not trying to mentally stack ideas up. You can try things out as you go through the day, and it breaks things up a little bit. You can go to a clean tone, do the clean parts for a couple of hours, go back to heavy tone. You're not getting bored on doing the same thing all the time. So to me, it makes it more creative and more, the workflow just a lot better. I'm just really impressed. I'm really impressed. They've obviously sat down, there's a lot of thought gone into it. It looks good, it's easy to work around. So yeah, it's just a well thought out piece of equipment. I would say it inspires my playing because you've got the flexibility to go between different settings, but when you've got a great tone at the flick of a switch and you plug in and you're there, yeah, it does it, but you vibe off it, you definitely vibe off it. Since I've got it, I've been writing great stuff, just because you sat there and you're hearing it coming back, sounding so good. And the other thing that is really good about this, the way recording's going now, everyone's recording at home. Even some of the bigger bands now are doing their overdubs at home. They're not in a studio. And with this, you've got your tone. You've got that tone. You could go into a bigger studio, spend 3 or 4 days, hire some backline in. If that's to the extent you want to do this, get the sounds out of it you want, and then just take it home. And you can track your album with this straight into your whatever rig you're using at home. And to be honest, you're not going to know the difference. I think it's going to move recording forward the same way as Pro Tools has, to be honest. So we're going to show you a couple of demos on here, actually, switching between the profiled sound and the actual sound we got on the album on the Testament record. We did the Testament album, we started off sort of the middle of last year before I'd actually got hold of a Kemper. And Eric came over here. We did most of the guitar recording here, but it was to the point where the songs weren't really finished, so we ended up going back to San Francisco to finish off with a few arrangements and put the vocals in. And obviously once you start doing that, you start chopping bits out and you start realising that, oh, maybe we should have had a key change here. Just little bits, So we'd go and we'd record DIs in San Francisco, and when I came back here, I'd got hold of a Kemper, so I basically went in and profiled Eric's rig that we had. And I just want to show you how ridiculously close, well, it's identical. So here we've got the original recording. Let me show you. So that's Eric's original playing. And if I just show you now and put it on input, and then this is now going through the Kemper with the profile. It does sound that accurate. And when, you know, if I'm sat here in the studio and I can't tell the difference between that and the actual amp that I've profiled, then if it's good enough for me, you know, in a studio environment, I don't know who else is going to fault it, to be honest.